everyone. My name is Claudia.
I'm Jordan.
I'm Andrew.
And we're Team 2. Today we're going to be discussing the fair debt collection practices and the unethical and ethical sides of collecting from surviving family members of deceased.
Imagine if a family member passed and immediately upon his or her passing you begin to receive phone calls, letters, and possibly court demands to repay his or her debt. Are you aware of what you are or are not responsible for? Do you know what your rights are in regards to debt collection practices? For many individuals, the answer is no to all of the above questions. This opens the door for them to become manipulated into paying a debt they may not be responsible for. Our team will be going over the ethical and non-ethical sides of creditors attempting to collect from the deceased surviving family. According to the Federal Trade Commission, family members typically are not obligated to pay the debts of a deceased relative from their own assets. What's more, family members and all consumers are protected by the Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, FDCPA, which prohibits debt collectors from using abusive, unfair, or deceptive practices to try and collect a debt. The FDCPA became effective in 1978. It was made to diminish the practices from collection agencies. In this essay, we will touch on the ethical view of collection practices and the recent changes. From Fulberry's Universal Ethics, we must look at the practices as a whole and ask the following questions. Is it universal? Is it comprehensive? Is it logical? Are the premises non-arbitrary? Our opinion is that the attempt to collect debts from relatives of a deceased person is universally unethical. Per the article referenced on creditcard.com, collection agencies attempt to immediately contact the family while they are still grieving in order to build a relationship and collect the debt. Since the family is vulnerable, they are easily coerced and or intimidated into paying the debt of their deceased family member. Some ways the collection agencies use unethical practice is by using misleading information and not advising that the family is not responsible for the debt. Calling an excessive amount of times per day. For example, in a news article from the News Bank Incorporated, a gentleman died from receiving 10 to 12 calls per day. The man had fallen behind on his mortgage due to medical reasons. The excessive and subjectively harassing phone calls caused the man's blood pressure to raise and unfortunately causing his death. In the same article, there was a reference to a collection agency writing WWJD on the corner of their letters, implying the commonly heard phrase, "What would Jesus do?" Other common debt collecting practices can be implied abuse, incarceration for not paying the debt. Can you imagine losing a loved one and experience the above examples? In what world would this ever be considered ethical?
Approaching the subject from a different point of view. Should family members be contacted or certain family members? As the spouse of the deceased person should be financially obligated to pay the debt. For collection agencies looking at this with the utilitarian approach, the answer is yes. According to the textbook, the utilitarian approach is guided by what will result in the greatest good for the greatest number of people. The agency should be allowed to attempt to recover their funds. This is why the FTC has allowed debt collectors to contact families for the following reasons. To get the name and address, the telephone number of the deceased person's spouse, executor, administrator, or other person authorized to pay the deceased debts. According to the textbook, stakeholders are defined as people whose interests are affected by an organization's activities. In this scenario, the stakeholders would be the creditors. The survivors have no legal obligations to a debt unless they are co-signed. The only individual who could lose or be impacted would be the collection agencies. This would, in some sense, allow you to understand desperate acts to recover the outstanding debts from anyone willing to pay. The collection agencies are businesses and are a business, and their businesses thrive solely on the funds of others. Let me get the website for that.
WalletHub.com.
Should we end it?
No, please keep going.
WalletHub.com advises that in the year 2016, over $29 billion in debt were charged off lost. Does this justify the abuse and misleading practices? Maybe the stakeholders sure, but for the surviving families, absolutely not. By doing research and knowing the results of your rights regarding what collection agencies can or cannot do to you will help you know whether the collectors have good intentions or if they're trustworthy. However, it can become tricky because
According to the FTC, the debt collectors claim to be federal state agents, investigators, or members of the government task force, and they pretended to be a law firm. They falsely told consumers that their driver's license would be revoked and that they would face immediate imprisonment if they didn't pay up. How did debt collectors even know how to contact the consumers? The FTC says many people had inquired about a payday loan online at one point in time and submitted the contact information that the company later got. This just shows how easily our public information can be sent to collection agencies, and they can immediately start trying to fraudulently collect a debt that you may have never, one, encountered, or two, that if you did encounter or owed, maybe it's resolved and they are trying to come back and get double the money. There have been several cases of fraudulent agencies that are trying to collect from people, specifically those who who have died, because their deceased family members may not know all of their financial obligations. So they use that. Some of them go fishing through obituaries to try to say that they have the information. They know that you're the spouse, that you're the wife, or that you're the son, and that you're responsible for paying this debt. This is just one of many instances in where the integrity and the trustworthiness of collection agencies have come into question. I mean, how do you ever know who's contacting you and if they're contacting you about something real or if they're just attempting to get money out of nothing? According to the creditcard.com, there are agencies who seek victories through obituaries and waiting for vulnerable families. So again, they specifically go for family members who have recently passed somebody, and they try to build that relationship in order to say, hey, your husband had this debt, or your son had this debt, and it's time for you to pay. And the FDCPA has, the Federal Debt Protection Act, has now put even more strict guidelines around these practices, that they have to let you know that you are not responsible for the debt that the estate is, and there's a difference. So what management decisions were involved, and how does our text discuss these decisions? The management structure of the collection agencies seem to be, according to our text, task-oriented leadership and mixed with transactional leadership. Meaning that they set a goal, so the task is to collect X amount of money, or to collect, overall within the next month, reduce X amount of debt. And they have a task, but it's transactional, so they don't care about their partners, they don't care about the consumers, they don't care how they get it, they just need to get it completed in order for their company to thrive. Since their customers are in a vulnerable state, if our group were to manage the collections, we have come to the conclusion that if the debt is real, we would obviously attempt to collect from the estate. We would never collect from the living members or the survivors of the deceased. It's not practical and it's not right. So we, from our moral standpoint, would absolutely not. Now, if there is an estate, we would follow the guidelines that the laws have placed, and that we would ask who's responsible for the estate, how much the estate has, and how much is able to come to us. The family should only have to provide the estate information. In conclusion, the collection agency's practices have been changed due to the FTC regulation. The responsibility for debt is still in the gray area, in which allows debt collectors to still practice unethical collection strategies to demand money from their families of the deceased. We hope the FTC continues their efforts to make the collectors' jobs more difficult and assist our communities to know their rights. One of the things that we found in our research was that a lot of individuals just didn't know, and because of the vulnerable state they're in and losing someone that they love, they weren't willing to look into what they did, what rights they did and did not have. I mean, made between harassing phone calls, maybe fraudulent debt. They're in a state of mind that does not allow them to think logically, and that is what the debt collectors want. All of our citations can be found in our citation page. We hope that this video explains our thoughts and our research in the debt collection practices and how we believe that they're more immoral and unethical and that there should be stricter laws against them.